Hi, this is Jessica DeMassa in the GuideWell Insights Lounge here at Singularity University's Exponential Medicine 2017. Right now, joining me in the lounge, we have David Ewing Duncan, and he is an author and also a writer for Wired. And David's last book was on longevity, and we have a new book coming out. Is it around Christmas, was it?
No, it's actually next year.
Next year, sorry about that, next year, on robots. So you are really covering all different aspects of health technology, and I love what you said before about how you write on it for Wired, how it's kind of the intersection of all of these exponential technologies and the human experience with it, what society is going to do with it. So I know that here you said that you've resurrected a concept from your past in the sense of being the experimental man.
Right.
And so explain to me this idea of the experimental man and give me an update. What's going on right now?
Well, Experimental Man started way back 15, 16 years ago. I got an assignment at Wired magazine to write about the Human Genome Project. And I was pretty new. I'd been a healthcare and a political reporter before that. I was pretty new to bioscience. And I thought, this is kind of, frankly, boring. It's 4 letters in code, genetics. And, how am I going to make this interesting? So I got the idea of having myself tested. And weirdly, nobody had thought of that. And so I got a company here in San Diego, actually, to test me.
Okay.
And so I got all these findings, and I was able to write about it from, a real human being talking about it. And I could talk about the implications for my kids and all of this. And it turned out to be a really successful way of telling that story and reporting on it.
And now you're doing this again.
Yeah.
Is what you told me.
Yeah.
And what's the interesting plot twist this time?
Okay. Well, so the last 15 years I've done this off and on. I had a book come out about it. But it turns out it's a great way to test drive all these new technologies we're talking about here at Exponential Medicine. And, what does it really mean for us as humans? I mean, the technology's cool, but how's it going to affect us? And so I wrote the book in 2009. I've continued to do some things. But we have a whole new wave of companies now, some of which are here at the meeting at Exponential Medicine. And I figured it was time to start, what can I do now? But I'm older now, and there are some things predicted 15 years ago.
Did they come to fruition?
Well, these were not really great predictions or science, but I have early stage hypertension, not a good thing for me, but it's very early and it's manageable, but that was predicted in my original Wired story that I might have that in my future.
Really? Interesting.
So, and I also, because I am a little older.
I'm going to stop you there.
Yes.
Did you try to do anything to prevent it when you had that information the first time?
Oh yeah, well, it's treatable. I mean, it's
yeah.
easily treatable, so. Yeah, no, I'm taking very small doses of one of the meds. Yeah.
So you use that information in an attempt to.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
And that's what this is all about. So the area I'm really reporting on now, and we called it here human 3.0, but or I call it personalized health, whatever you want to call it. But it's about how we use this information to help us as individuals, to help our families, our kids, our parents, whatever. And where are we in that progression? And the critical point, the core thing we want to try to learn here is how do our bodies go from a state of healthiness to disease? And where does that exact point where that happens? Because right now we have sick care, not health care.
Right.
We wait until we get symptoms. What if we could actually find out, okay, if I adjusted this thing slightly, it might put off or prevent me getting heart disease or diabetes.
And I know you've talked about, so in all of this prevention, in all of this testing, one of the books that you had written the last one was about longevity.
Yeah.
And now, I think your take on that to me was very interesting. And you had said that it was basically what's going to happen if all of these ways to prolong our life actually come to fruition. So what did you find out? What was your takeaway from that?
Well, it was a TEDx talk in Brussels. And I did it almost out of spite with all the people in Silicon Valley where I live that want to live forever. And I was like, okay, Let's say you can do it. Let's have a little thought experiment here. Then what?
Yeah.
What happens? I mean, what would you do with your life? Do people even really want that? And it turns out we've tested in my old program at Berkeley, we actually did these surveys, about 50,000 people, how long would you want to live? And it turns out that even if you offer them these technologies, most people don't want to live more than a normal lifespan of 80. Some want to live maybe 120, but we also have some way out there, like even forever. And very few people actually, I don't know if it's a failure of imagination or what, but and I personally don't want to live forever. I don't know what I do all that time.
Like with your time or like?
Right, well, I mean, forever, first of all, is a kind of metaphysical concept anyway.
Sure.
But We asked people why or why not they would want to live to be 150.
What were some of the answers?
It was fascinating. I mean, most people, they didn't want to be old and frail, so just tacking on unhealthy decades is not fun.
Appealing, right?
People talked about money. Could they afford it? I mean, you know, would you get a new job? And we're already having some issues with, you know, jobs and, you know, quality jobs.
Right.
I mean, you know, and then people thought about larger global issues like resources. I mean, if everybody stopped dying,
yeah.
I mean, you know, you would have that many more people consuming resources. So it kind of went on and on like that. And people who did want to live that long were like, oh, you know, I have so much to do, and, you know, I want to get another, you know, maybe I have a PhD, but I want to get 2 more, and I want to learn to play the piano when I'm 150. And so it was fascinating. It's almost a view, though, of how people thought about life and themselves. It was a really interesting insight into how optimistic they were or whatever.
Or not, right?
Yeah, exactly.
No, so, okay, so in that context then, you know, we're here at XMed and there's so much talk about different types of technologies that can extend your life. And longevity had its own, you know, series of speakers to it.
Yeah,
and it's basically, you know, a real, you know, forward-thinking look at like, okay, this is how we can extend life. So it's like, I'm interested to know, you know, based on what you've heard, should we be trying to do this, you know, and what's that ethical debate, I guess?
Well, I think it's an interesting question of where is all this heading. I mean, we all want to be healthier and we all want to live longer. I mean, you know, I think if you ask anybody, not just exponential medicine, I mean, of course, and you want your kids to have a long life and you want everybody, you know, we hate to see our parents age and all of that. But what does it all mean? I mean, we are actually, with the technologies that we're developing, I would say in the next 50 to 100 years, and possibly even sooner, we will actually be able to extend lifespan and, you know, have that magical world that people in the past have thought about where you stay healthier longer. Then what? You know, what do you do?
What do you do?
I mean, is it expensive? Who gets it?
Right.
I mean, you know, there are all those questions too.
Who do you think should be having this conversation? Like, I mean, like, okay, that's a huge debate. I mean, that's a big ethical moral debate. So who should be
You're getting into my older life, which is like, you know, policy and politics and stuff.
Oh, well, let's go.
Well, because it's really how society organizes itself.
Yeah, it really is.
And we don't have a really good way of discussing that right now. I mean, at best, we might have some kind of, you know, presidential report on longevity or, you know, the ethics of, say, synthetic biology or something like that. But we don't really have a great way of processing this. I mean, we have a market economy and people create products and in a way that people decide if they want it or not or want to buy it. But that isn't always the best barometer for a long-term question. We're starting to see that, you know, play out like with social media, with Facebook, where suddenly it becomes a little sinister, right?
Where does it end?
I mean, it seemed to be this wonderful thing. You could share all your stuff with your friends, but, you know, all technology has pluses and minuses. And we don't have a good way of really discussing it. We almost have to wait until something happens and then react to it.
Interesting. Well, that's so thought-provoking, David. Thank you so much. I mean, thank you so much for joining us. And if anybody wants to find any of your books, I'm sure they can find them on Amazon. And again, this is David Ewing Duncan.
And I have a website too.
Oh,
it's a brand new website, davidewingduncan.com.
Oh, fantastic.
So
Ewing is spelled E-W-I-N-G.
Correct.
Duncan.com.
Yep.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for joining us again. It was a pleasure to speak to you. I'm Jessica DeMassa here in the GuideWell Insights Lounge at Exponential Medicine 2017.